I have Moira Geoffrion. That took me a long time to learn how to say your name. Probably still don't say it completely correct. Do I?
Well,
Let's
it's actually Geoffrion.
Geoffrion.
But if you told people that, they would never figure it out.
Moira, that one alone is hard for me. I've got it now. I've got that one down. That took me years.
Yeah.
I do not know why. It's just a hard one for me.
Mm-hmm.
The syllables and the vowels just don't want to.
Well, then you don't forget, right?
No, I don't forget. Well, I could never forget you anyway. So we did a podcast a long time ago.
Yes, it
Talked
was.
about a lot of different things, but I wanted to have you on today because you're doing this event for us, a show which we helped to name together, which you called Pods, Plants, and Parts, which is exactly what it is, right?
Yes.
And it's this monumental piece of sculpture / art / you name it, that, can be separated and not separated. And it's 144 paintings, right?
Yeah.
So
144.
And so we'll put some images on the podcast as well so people can see it.
Yeah.
But what motivates someone to go, I'm going to do 144 paintings of individual pods, plants, and parts, and plant parts, to do that? I mean, that to me is, first of all, it would be monumental in my own mind to go, I don't know if I can do that. And, I'll let you tell me, because I don't know. Do you just start off with 3 and go, I should do 9, and 9 turns into 18, and all of a sudden you go, I've got something?
It's interesting because for years, after I did this series, I looked back on the work in the studio, and I realized for decades I've been doing grids. And in the early, when I first became head of the School of Art at the U of A, I didn't have enough time to do the sculpture that I was doing because I was doing bronze casting. So I started painting little paintings and tossing them on the floor.
Yes.
And my husband walked down and he says, "Oh, you're making quilts." And so the grid quilts, quote unquote, came from that. But they're oil paintings. And in this particular series, I started doing a few paintings, close-up details of seed pods or seeds or plant parts that I thought were really beautiful and that maybe a lot of people wouldn't find interesting at all.
Or even notice.
Yeah, or even notice. And you step on them,
Yeah, right.
And so I started doing those. Now, I come from growing up on a farm and working the land since I could walk. So I've always noticed textures and forms like that. And so I started doing a couple of these and in Colorado at the beginning of the summer, and suddenly I thought, well, I should do a whole wall. The whole
Of
idea
course I should.
of the whole studio wall.
Right.
And so I looked at the wall, and I figured what I thought the dimensions were. I didn't measure it. And I thought, well, that'd take 144 paintings. Let's see if I can do it.
Which is 24 feet, by the way.
Yeah, I know. And so, well, my studio wall isn't quite that long, so it took a curve at the end, which was interesting and gave me some sculptural ideas as a result of actually making some of those pods 3D. But for this show, it's the entire summer's work in there, and it's every kind of plant form that I either planted or grew or cut away from where I was gardening or whatever.
And that's another thing. You have a very big garden both here and
I have about
Tucson,
a half an acre
and then a
up
huge
in
one
Colorado,
in Colorado, yes.
Gardens, 4 gardens.
But a lot of these things are wild.
But they're wild, yeah. And when I was weeding or moving things for the garden, I went, this is really beautiful. I should take a picture of it, or I should keep it. And then I would move some of those plants and replant them elsewhere.
You would replant the weeds?
Yeah, well, because they were wildflowers. There's some of them.
Yes.
The pods in this show may look desiccated or squiggly, but the flowers are absolutely stunning. And tiny. These things are magnified in the show tremendously for the most part.
When you do that, when you're magnifying them, you take a photo with your camera, right?
Yeah, my cell phone.
Are they? So they're not all the same magnification. Some are a little bigger and some are smaller, depending on the image,
and
right?
the cell phone, I'm not a great photographer, so a lot of them are blurry and out of focus, but I get the idea.
Right.
And then from the kind of training I had as an undergraduate, it was almost photorealist training at that time. So I alter things and pop the color and change the form a little bit, you know.
Right. Well, you do portraits too. You've done a lot of portraits.
Right.
I mean, you've done one of me. Actually, this podcast has one of me of it from you.
You have that on your website.
Yeah, that's the image, which came from Moira. So you start this project, and is there a point where you go, okay, I'm out of control, or I've got to keep doing this? I mean, because that's a huge commitment too, right?
Well, it's a big commitment, and I didn't know how it would look in the end.
Right.
And I'm thinking quilt,
Right.
I'm thinking of women's quilts, and some of them are called crazy quilts, right? So colors don't go together.
Right.
So I figured I had some leeway.
Right.
But it was interesting as they evolved. Suddenly, one that I was working on just demanded to be next to one over there that I'd finished, and not next to this other one. In my mind, it was either the color relationship or the contrast. So there are lighter panels that become almost like spotlights in the painting, and others sort of blend together. But it's a mixture of weeds and wildflowers and plants that we plant in our gardens.
Right.
And, so
and I noticed there's like a cactus, one part of a cactus.
Yeah.
And
right.
different. Is there devil's claw?
I have one at home that I did of a devil's claw, which I didn't like the color on it in the background. So I'm repainting it. So that's why it's not in this group thing.
Okay.
So
yeah, because I didn't remember
seeing that
one.
happened with a lot of them, and I painted over some because I realized they bored me. When I got one done, I go like, I don't like this. So I would just paint over and do another painting. So some of them have 3 paintings.
And are you setting them as you finish them? Or are you putting them laying on the ground and making a design? Or
yeah, I was putting them on a large table.
Yes.
And moving them around.
Like a puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you do this project, and at some point it starts to get noticed by other people too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you were, asked to put it in the Venice Biennale, right?
Yeah. There were several curators, friends that I started sending the pictures to, because they're always interested in what I'm doing. And one of the Italian curators, got right back to me and said, I'm going to connect you with people. And the next thing I knew, I got an invitation to be in the Venice Biennale in 24 in the Palazzo Bembo. So
with this painting.
Yeah, this painting. Well, she said in the end, I said, some people have already come and bought pieces from me. And she said, we like the concept.
Yes.
And as I said, I'm thinking of doing some of these more delicate pieces that you see in this big grid as sculptural forms. So they would be large, kind of airy sculptures that could be sitting on the floor in front of the piece. And when I mentioned that to the curator at the Venice Biennale, she said, well, we can do it this year in 24, or we can do it in 26, whatever works for you. So I thought that was really nice.
Right.
But it's not inexpensive to
there's the rub,
shipping
right?
and the whole thing, and they have fees and so on and so forth.
Right. So they won it, which is a very important event.
Yeah.
Super important. But you also have to get the money to do it.
Right.
So basically, we got the piece, which we're exhibiting right now. It's up as we speak. But what we're going to do, because you're an artist and you like food to eat, not just to paint, is that we're also going to sell individual or multiple groups of pieces. And then hopefully, unless somebody buys the big piece, then we take that, and you can always repaint some of the smaller ones and fill it in if need be, if we can get enough money to get it to the Biennale, right?
Yeah.
And so I thought it was interesting how you set up the work. I thought it was really kind of genius with the magnets. Maybe you can tell about how you did that.
Well, I have an older brother who's a contractor.
Yes.
And he was looking at me moving them around.
Yes.
And trying to figure out, because he lives in Colorado there, and he was watching me move them around. He said, well, you really need to put magnets on the back of yours. So it was really his idea. And then I started thinking about it, and I thought that was really interesting because each panel is magnetized, and they're hanging on 26 gauge piece of steel, which is very lightweight.
Yes.
And so it suddenly occurred to me, if I had this painting like the grid behind you on the wall, and I thought, I want one of those orange panels to be over here or something like that. Or let's say I lived with it for 5 years, and I decided maybe I should move it around.
Right.
I could then take sections and just start moving the different arrangements, because there were many possible variations for this wall. And so in one way, it makes it more collective for the person who has to live with the art.
I like that.
To play with it in
I
a way.
like that idea, because you can change it up.
Yeah.
As long as you've got the back panel for it to stick to with the grid.
And for shipping purposes. I mean, it also became magical for the shipping idea to get something to Italy, because you can take all the panels off, put them in a box.
Yes.
A couple of boxes that aren't terribly large, and then you just ship the sheets of steel on their own.
Yes.
And you don't have to worry about huge crates.
Yeah, and the paintings themselves
damage.
are on little boards, right? Little art boards.
Yeah.
And then if you don't want to use the magnets,
you just put a hanger on the back.
You just put a hanger on the back, which is quite easy to do too.
Yeah.
And it'll be the same process. Or you could, the magnet, they're both magnets, so it could stick to any piece of metal, right? So it could go
you could put them on your refrigerator,
right?
I'm thinking the same thing.
It seems like
the one with the cord apple slices would be perfect on the refrigerator.
All of them. I mean, there's a bunch of them that would look great on a I would say if you had the right refrigerator, you could cover the whole refrigerator with them.
That's right, yeah.
That would be very cool.
That would be fun.
That would be very cool. I don't know how many refrigerators still have metal.
Then you ship the refrigerator to the Biennale, right?
Or you just,
full of some really nice wine or cheese or something like that.
I don't know if my refrigerator is metal. I mean, it looks like metal, but I don't, you don't know anymore.
Ours is, it's metal. We got all these little kids magnet things on there, yeah. So, from the grandkids.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Or you could also put them back to back, or will they repel? I think they might repel.
They stick together.
Yeah, because then you could have
some of them are really hard to get apart.
Then you could have as an ornament.
There you go.
If you put a hanger, and it would.
Could be a wall out in the middle of a room, or a divider.
It actually could.
Yeah.
So that's the fun part of what you have come up with, just the display. I still find it, and I think I look back at your work, and I've represented you long enough and seen enough. You are into grids. You do these grids.
Yeah.
And what is that? Why is that? Do you think?
I can't figure that one out, except that I think I was thinking of women's quilts when I started doing them.
Did you ever quilt at all?
Because I at Notre Dame, I ran the foundry and the metals, the welding and woodworking shop, but I also started a fiber studio. And so we had 18 looms, and I was teaching people how to weave, and also a Hollander beater, which is a huge ton press, and I was teaching them how to make handmade paper and all kinds of fibers pieces. And actually, a lot of my early fiber pieces, now that I think of, from the early 80s, were woven grids. They were small weavings about the same, almost the same size as these, but they had all different kinds of feathers in them. And then I would put them together on a wall in a grid structure. So
grids again.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And then some of them would be hangings coming down into the room and going 20 feet across the floor. And when I showed in the museum in München-Gladbach, the Altes Museum, which was the museum which Joseph Beuys had his first solo museum show in, and Anthony Caro and Carl Andre and people like that had their first European shows. In the Altes Museum, they gave me several rooms, and they were going to take some of the 3D grids that had cactus parts in them, but the director of the museum didn't realize there was a import law, no plant parts, especially cactus. So I was in real trouble. It was 3 months before the show, and I came up with a grid quilt idea where I could layer images of my pieces that he wanted, which are 2D, 3D, if I could print them photographically on translucent material. And so once I did that, I could hang them into the gallery, which was huge. Yes. And have a piece that came 15 feet into the gallery. People could walk between the sections, but they felt like they were part of this grid quilt. And I find it interesting. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of that would have influenced me, the idea of women's quilts. And I was teaching students how to do quilts and how to weave, which is a grid structure. Because when we had our assignments to draw buildings and things like that and do architectural drawings, I just hated that. I felt kind of constrained.
But bailing yourself out with the grids that you did also probably stuck.
Yeah.
So this was good. It bailed me out. It was a museum show.
Yeah.
People liked it. I liked it. Maybe that was kind of the impetus for you to kind of, because that's early on in your career, right?
Yeah. Well, and I find that often accidents or difficult situations in terms of how you're going to hang this show make me come up with new ideas, which is kind of exciting. It's not kind of it's not this straight road where you just kind of plod along and do the same thing over and over.
Yeah, you definitely don't do that. Well, you don't. You do very modern to very traditional kind of almost, realism to some extent. But you can make a pair of boots out of a saguaro, skin, because we just had those before too, remember?
Yes.
Which we sold. And your mom wasn't a quilter.
No, but growing up on a farm with no money, we had to raise all of our food.
Yes.
And she made all of our clothes and taught us all how to make our own clothing. Yes. So I sewed from as soon as I could hold the needle and not prick myself too much. She was a concert pianist too. She played for Martha Graham. So she was out there, and she a modern dancer.
Yeah, she ended up on a farm with a bunch of kids.
Right. Well, she fell in love with this wonderful man, a Swiss philosopher.
Yes, okay.
And they started having kids, so you've got to change your lifestyle.
Yeah, but that's a big switch.
And he and she, she grew up with a very poor family out in the country near Seattle. They had no money, so she already knew gardening and that kind of stuff. But he was from a very wealthy Swiss family and was supposed to take over his dad's company. But he really wanted to be a philosopher, so he immigrated to the United States and became a poor philosopher. But he had always wanted to be on a farm. And so they just decided to try it, and they're out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, where was this?
It was southeastern Ohio, not far from the Ohio River. Up in our hills, we had 136 acres. And there were caves, old coal mining caves up there. Things like that. We found a lot of Native American artifacts.
Sure,
They were just spectacular. And we had horses and cows and sheep, goats, lots of goats, chickens.
Right, and you have a pigs, lot of brothers and sisters too, right?
And 6 of us.
Yeah. And so everybody...
We all had to work.
You had to work, right? Really work.
You worked for 2 hours in the morning before you got breakfast.
Yeah.
Then you were hungry and you ate a lot.
Right.
then you went to school.
And then you did 2 hours when you got back.
That was 3 in the afternoon.
Was it?
We had Saturdays off. That was our day off.
Just so you could do homework.
After you fed the animals.
Yeah, animals being cows and things like that.
Everything,
calves and stuff.
We made our own cheese.
Yes.
We canned. We everything. Our own meat was butchered, and we had butcherings were really fun on the farm because they were like big parties. All the farmers would get together as soon as the first freeze, and then every weekend they'd go from farm to farm and help each other butcher. And big potlucks like you've never seen. And as a kid, that was really fun.
Well, you do it as an adult.
Yeah.
I've been to many of your parties. It's always a ton of people, often a potluck.
Yeah.
With you providing the most of the food. But, so that's stuck for sure.
Yeah.
And you still garden.
Yeah.
A lot. But you live for...
If I didn't garden, you wouldn't like me. If I didn't make art and I didn't garden...
I was going to say, if you didn't make art, I wouldn't like you because...
If I didn't make art and I didn't garden...
Yeah.
I probably would be kind of mean.
Yeah, well, I get it, right? I mean, that's your creative outlet. Gardening is definitely a creative outlet, too. And so because it also allows you to cook.
My daughter, who's a modern dancer, she said the latest, she was reading some article, she said the latest is that gardening is the slowest performance art. And I'm thinking well, it wasn't that slow, but if you think you're just sitting there weeding for half an hour, it's more.
I would say the bonsai trees those would be some of the slowest, or boujum trees, growing boujum trees.
Right.
There's
yes.
I've been growing 3 of them, and they haven't grown much in 20 years. So, but I look at them all the time, water them.
They're great.
They're
the textures on them, fabulous.
Yeah, I've got 3 of them.
I'm always stopping, and that's the problem. I like to have Charles drive when we go places because then I can take photographs. Because otherwise, I don't get very far.
Have you seen the boojum trees at the University of Arizona?
Oh, they're gorgeous.
Yeah, they were planted.
We have neighbors who have a fabulous one.
Yeah, how big?
It's beautiful. It's probably about 30 feet tall.
Oh God, where's that? Right on your street?
Yeah.
I'll have to go by and see that one.
Maybe 20. Yeah.
So for those who don't know what this is a very prehistoric looking cactus / tree that has these long branches that kind of come out, and it's dead
and
half the year, and then and it's just a straight bean pole that goes up with these long.
The skin on it almost looks like the skin on an elephant.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, it's not that color, but the texture.
And they're mainly from Mexico, Baja, I think, that kind of area. But they'll grow in Tucson. And, as long as they're
they do
protected.
really well here.
Yeah, I think they have to be a little protected. But the University of Arizona has some great specimens that were planted.
But they grow kind of the same speed as saguaros, don't you think?
Slower even, maybe.
Even slower than saguaros?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it depends if they get water or not. I kind of water mine, so they move along.
Yeah.
I'll try to put in an image for those people that are.
That would be fun.
What is a boojum tree?
Everybody needs a boojum tree.
And they're rare and they're hard to find, and they're, you can usually only buy them as small little specimens, and then you just have to wait. So don't start planting them at 70 unless you have an exit plan for your kids or grandkids.
You got to know that someone's going to inherit your house that will keep where your tree. It'll keep it going because it's for a long time.
Though they will transplant.
Yeah,
they do transplant. I remember going to a house one time to buy some art, and this lady had a magnificent boojum tree, and I was like, the art was not much, but I was like, how about for the boojum? And she goes, oh, you know what that is? I go, oh yeah, I know what that is. It's fantastic. She goes, Desert Museum just said they'll take it, so it's going to them.
Wow.
So it's out there somewhere. Hopefully they did a good job, and it's all right. I'm sure they did. So,
well, it's like people like us who have a desert tortoise because a car almost ran over it on the highway.
Yeah, you can have them, and there's
you have to find. The Desert Museum said, "Well, you better have a plan for inheritance of somebody who's gonna, because they live so long."
They do, for very long. But you didn't do. You should do a boojum part.
Yes.
That would be very interesting looking.
Yes.
For sure. Elephant skin or the leaves. I haven't seen what fruits they produce.
Well, there's so many things I want to paint. I mean,
that's the problem, right?
It is. Somebody said to me, "You're never on your Facebook, or you're not updating it." I haven't updated it for 5 years. I said,
you're not on it then.
And I said,
5 years.
I said, if I spent time doing that, God. I wouldn't be doing these paintings. And I have so many paintings to do before I disappear that I just got to keep cranking them out.
Yeah. Do you feel that pressure? Like, I'm running out of runway here?
Well, sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I know what I feel.
I don't feel ill or anything, but I know that I won't be able to do all the ideas I want to do, so I better do as many as I can now. Yeah,
do you prioritize and go, this is what because when time becomes so precious and you go, okay, I only have, there's certain projects I don't want to take on because I go, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it with everything else I want to do, and I don't want to take away from
I keep starting things. I know that the whole long road, like if I start these sculptures, it's going to get me back into sculpture.
Right.
And then I'm going to be split again, and which is okay, because the two fields, for me, feed them each other.
Yeah.
And give me variations. But it means you're not going to get as much done in one area.
Yeah, in one area. Do you worry about that? Your legacy or any of that stuff?
Oh, there's so much art. I got enough art for a legacy.
Yeah,
right?
But you don't worry about that. You don't think about it.
No, I don't worry about that. I mean, I've got drawers and drawers of drawings. I figure someday someone will have fun. Well, the U of A has me in their archive anyway, in their museum archive, and which is quite wonderful because you can just send them everything. So they have lots of my files, and they have drawings in their collection, some paintings, and so on. But someday somebody could go through all that and figure out the history of it. I've always thought. You always remember what you do and when you did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we were younger, we thought that, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Now I'm like, I don't remember when I did that unless I look at my resume.
Right, I'm sure.
I really don't. And then I'll find things in the studio when I'm cleaning, paintings that I forgot I did, and I go, oh, I really like that. Oh, I should do another one that relates to that, and then it takes me off on a tangent. So.
Yeah, you're one of the most creative people I think I've ever run across, honestly. It seems like your whole being is just really wrapped into creativity to produce.
When I was little, so there was 2 older sisters, then my brother, then me and my twin sister, and then a younger sister. And so there were a bunch ahead of us. And my twin sister is an actress, and she's amazing.
Is she identical? No.
No, she's a redhead.
Yeah, okay.
Now she's a strawberry blonde, which she
okay.
doesn't like to admit.
Yeah, okay.
Because she's getting gray hair. But she's a tremendous actress. She's also a Russian scholar.
Huh.
And headed the Russian program at Oregon State University. And when we were young, she was out there. I mean, she was always out there. And I was really quiet, which you might not believe. But
I believe it.
I was always I would like to go out in the morning when I was little and stand next to the milkweed.
Yes.
So I was the same height as the milkweed, and I'd watch the hummingbirds eat from the milkweed. So, these ideas started way back then. But I would always prefer to be out in nature or by myself and not doing, all this wild socializing. So she kind of took care of that side.
Do you see yourself as an introvert?
And maybe, I don't know. But then when I met Charles, he really brought me out more. And then, of course, I was a department head in 2 different universities and so on. So you have to be out there.
You have to be.
You have to be. So,
but if you have your druthers, would you rather be in your kitchen or your studio than anywhere else?
I'd rather be in the studio than anywhere else. Yeah.
That seems right.
Yeah, and the kitchen too. But so I see, that focus has always been there. Furthermore, because I was quieter, and I have this philosopher father, I was the only one who would sit with him. He had a tremendous library of art history books because he was born in the late 1800s, and a man was supposed to be Renaissance then. So he knew about art and music, even though he was tone deaf, music and art and history and philosophy and all that. And he would sit there and we would go through all these art history books as a kid. And he would talk about art. I never had any art classes at that point, but I just started doing art. And then he was always encouraging. He was actually pretty good at drawing and painting as well.
When did he come over from?
Let me think.
Was he in World War I? That would be the question. Because if he's born,
he was in World War I. He was in the Swiss Army, and he was actually in charge of the first group in the Swiss Army that went from horses to vehicles. So that dates him.
Yeah.
But then during World War I, he was stationed in the northern border of Switzerland, right at the north-south border between France and Germany. And he said they had to guard the border because they didn't know if people were going to come in. It was a neutral country and people didn't, but then there were a lot of refugees. But he said they would be feeding the German troops and they'd be feeding the French troops or giving them blankets and stuff because they're down there freezing in the trenches, and they could watch them. So then after World War I, his father wanted to import John Deere tractors. There were no tractors in Europe. So he gets this idea, and he says, Fritz, I want you to go negotiate the deal for me, because he figured Poppy was going to take over the company, because he was the oldest of 2 brothers. And Poppy thought, this is my chance.
Yeah, to escape.
Now, he has a degree in engineering because he was supposed to take over the company.
Right.
And he had a degree in philosophy. He did the 2 degrees at the same time. So he says, I'll go. And his dad was thrilled,
Right.
And so he went to the States. The modern car then was the Model T Ford. Bought a Model T Ford in New York, drove to Iowa, negotiated the deal, and then drove all the way to the West Coast to Seattle.
Yes.
And sent a cable home saying, I'm not coming back.
But I did do the deal for you.
He did the deal. And his brother, of course, was extremely wealthy as a result of...
So his brother took over.
And Poppy had no interest.
And he kept that company?
Yeah, he kept the company.
Yeah, so he became extremely wealthy.
Poppy didn't get income or anything from it, but he didn't care.
No,
he wanted to, teach thinkers.
Right.
And he fell in love with this gorgeous redhead,
Yeah, where was she from?
And he was very happy. She was from Seattle.
She was,
Yeah, and they were very, very poor. They had nothing.
And you must have been one of the later
her
kids.
Her father
right?
was blinded in a factory accident. So the income they had was if they cooked stuff for people, or if her father could sell things by walking door to door.
Yeah, so she was very poor.
Very poor.
Your dad was actually probably lived a fairly...
Oh, he's really cushy. Well, their house in Barron is an embassy now.
So he had a very cushy life.
Very nice house.
Obviously, he didn't care. So
yeah, he didn't want that.
He didn't want that. So interesting. Well, that's why you're like you are.
But he spent a lot. My mother encouraged us too, and she painted a lot. She self-taught herself, and she did some interesting paintings. They weren't great, but she was good,
Your mom.
Yeah, but music was her forte, and they both were very encouraging. But he did spend a lot of time with me, and I think looking at all those art history books really influenced me. I just thought Giotto was one of the most amazing people, and I could go down the list of,
So you knew you were going to go into art when you went to college?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I applied to Boston University School of Art.
Yeah.
And I didn't think I'd get in. And the first year teacher said to me, he pulled me aside. He said, I want to talk to you. Well, the first class, he had us all in the class. It was a huge class, almost 100 students. And he says, we're gonna teach you all to become fine art and famous artists. When you graduate from this school, we take you all to New York and get you into galleries.
Yes.
And he said, but I'm here to diminish this class by 2/3. And so then he had us all draw an ear, a nose, and an eye of someone next to us.
Right.
Okay, we spent an hour doing that. And then he picked 6 people to critique. I was one of them.
Oh, well.
40 things wrong with my ear.
Yeah. You thought,
I don't know how I stayed. I just was like, oh my God, I'm going to flunk out.
Right.
I'm one of the 2/3.
Purged, yeah.
But what it did do, and it made those of us who survived, we were driven.
Yeah, out of fear.
We did 20 to 25 drawing pads a semester.
Yeah, out of fear, though,
fear.
to some
extent.
extent.
I'm on the subway drawing people, and they're leaving to the next car because they don't like me staring at them.
Yeah.
But I'm drawing anything I can draw,
Yes. Well, it did set you up for what you did.
So it set me up with that drive in that sense.
Yes, and hopefully not the sense of fear anymore. But
So the U of A School of Art is excellent, but I have to say, when I came as head of the department and was teaching the drawing class, and I said to the students, you'll have to have about 10 pads filled with drawings. And they're like, no, you can't do that. One of the students, I said, why? And he said, well, they only require 2 here. I said, well, it's up to you if you want to be a practicing artist or not.
Yeah.
And the teacher at Boston University said to me, if you don't eat it, live it, sleep it, think it, dream it, you're not going to be an artist.
He's right.
And I bet most artists you talk to and the people, everyone you represent will probably say that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
without a doubt. Yeah, they have to. Because that's who they are.
Yeah.
And that's what they want. And
right.
A lot of them had to struggle to become an artist because they had events in their lives where people were telling them they couldn't be an artist and they knew they needed to be one.
That's right. Yeah.
So they had to overcome all that just to become an artist. And when you strive at all costs, no matter what it is, to become an artist,
and people are making fun of you or whatever.
Everything.
Yeah, the whole thing.
Your parents say, "What are you doing?" You're smart. You could be this. You could be that. And you're like, I don't want to be this. I don't want to be that. I want to be. I get it. I got rid of medicine to become an art dealer.
Yeah.
Right. And my parents were like, "What? What are you doing?" Huh? I was like, "Well,
It's our drug of choice, right?"
This is what I like. I like being around art and artists.
Right.
Not just the art.
No, but the artists.
The artists too. That's the bonus. That was the bonus I didn't know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that, oh, wow, these are people I can relate to.
There are a lot of dealers who I think don't feel that way.
Yeah.
I think they want to be around the art and they're there for the money. Yeah. And they don't really care for the artists necessarily, unless they're, Andy Warhol, and then they'll stand next to them and pat them on the back and say, I made you. I shouldn't say that.
Hey,
but
I talk to numerous artists multiple times a day, I'm sure, about things that have nothing to do with getting art. It's just telling me about what they're doing or showing me or informing me or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that mindset so well, and I guess I have that from writing too.
Yeah.
So for what
well,
I
you
do.
have all the writing, and then you do the photographing as well.
Yeah, that too.
So
I relate to the creative drive.
Yeah.
Not only relate to it, but I really admire it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a hard profession.
So did you always know that you wanted to be a doctor from when you were little, or did you?
No, I just thought I would be a scientist.
Okay.
That's what I thought I would be. Did a lot of things in science.
Well, that's definitely a creative field, certainly.
Can be
expansive,
but it seemed to be too limiting,
Yeah.
and I didn't. And I thought I didn't want to write grants all my life.
Oh yeah.
And I like interacting with people, and you know, science doesn't really lend you for that. So I thought, well, I'm good at science, and I like science, and I like people. So I'm more likely to go into the medical field. So I went into that. So not knowing about the art part. You know, just wasn't.
But probably being in the medical field made it so that you could afford to start buying art, and then you got hooked, right? Or not?
Yeah, I couldn't afford to buy art.
Or how did you?
Yeah, I was in the military. They don't pay anything.
Okay.
So you know, I just one piece at a time. You know, first pieces I bought on my credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah, I maxed out credit cards. That's what I did. Which is like, your art class where you've got 2/3 are gone.
Yeah.
Or you make it. Well,
we all got into galleries in New York, and everybody, big galleries, big name galleries.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I was with Lerner Heller right across the street from the Whitney Museum, and it was like really nice.
Yeah, but ultimately you said that's not my route. It is, but it isn't, because you went into teaching, right? I mean, you went into department head, however you want to describe that.
When I finished, but I was there. I was in the New York galleries after I started teaching. The thing was,
I know that.
Yeah, and I.
But you could have easily not done that, right?
I had such good teachers.
Yeah.
I think that it inspired me to kind of pass on the message in that sense. And we didn't have a lot of money, and Charles had a really good job. And then, I was offered the job at Notre Dame.
Yes.
And suddenly our medical benefits were fine, and the pay was really good. And we both had jobs there, so it just totally made sense.
Yeah, and then you had kids.
And then, I got there, and they didn't have any foundry, and I wanted to cast in bronze, so I built one.
Yeah. And that's creative.
And, and that kind of a thing. They had the wood shop and the metal shop, but they just had oxygen acetylene welding, so I thought we should have TIG and MIG and so on. So gradually building that up. But it also helped me see a whole department in that sense, that every area has ways to build and grow. And
then when did you come to the U of A to take over?
86. 86,
so
I was hired.
You came the year after the de Kooning was stolen.
We came in January, and it was stolen at Thanksgiving.
November and 25th or something.
And
so what was the hubbub around the university at that point in time?
They talked about it, but they weren't, they didn't know where it was, and they didn't know what to do, I guess.
Yeah, it's not the same department. One's the art museum, and you are, something
But
different.
the School of Art had, there were three other women faculty, and me when I was hired, out of 36 faculty.
Figures.
And and I and when I came for the interview, they didn't have a slide projector up, and of course we didn't have anything digital then. And so I said, "Well, where's the slide projector?" And they said, "Well, this is an administrative talk. You're going to talk about your administrative style." And I said, "No, you bring a slide projector in, or I'm not talking." And I said, "You need to see my art,
right?
Because I don't make art. I'm not a nice person.
Yeah,
I'm quite sure I wouldn't be." I said, "Furthermore, I don't want to be an administrator forever. We're doing this because this area of the country excites us, and furthermore, the student body represented the breadth of the United States."
Yes.
Notre Dame, that didn't. We love Notre Dame, but it was pretty homogenous.
Yes.
And so, that idea of teaching, having Native American students and African American students and Hispanic students and everybody, that excited me. And so,
you had done Peace Corps too, right?
Yeah, and we had been in the Peace Corps.
Yeah, you were in Africa, right?
Yeah, Sierra Leone.
Yeah.
And the Blood Diamond area. You wouldn't go there now. You get kidnapped.
Yeah.
But anyway, So I said, you need to see my work. If you don't like my work, you do not want to hire me, because I want to go into teaching after. I'll guarantee a minimum of 3 years, maximum of 5, as an administrator, and then I want to teach. And then of course, the foundry they had was pretty dysfunctional, and they didn't have any of the safety gear, so I closed it down and got several big grants and built a bigger one, the one that's in the building now. It was interesting. And then during those years, there were 7 retirements. Well, I interviewed every faculty member for an hour when I first came, so I'd get to know them. And one man, he came in, he says, I don't know if I can work for you. I said, I'm glad you're so honest. Can you tell me why? He says, I'm Mormon. And I thought, well, I know a bunch of Mormons that we could work, but
Right.
But he was very traditional. And I said, well, we have a lot in common. He said, really? And I said, yeah, we like big families. Because I was from a Catholic background. Yeah. And so then we got on perfectly.
Yeah, you can relate to it.
And he was wonderful. His work was terrific too. And the advantage of being an artist is you can trade with other artists.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that 2/3 of our collection is other artists' work that were through trades, not purchases.
Right.
Which is really nice, because then we went on to become known and stuff like that. So
not only trades, but you were able to get a Alice Neal painting too.
Yes, right.
It wasn't exactly a trade, but it
was. I started at Notre Dame again. There were only 2 women faculty, and so right. I went to the dean, and I said, we should have a woman artist in residence program here during the summers. He loved the idea, so we started it. So then I would call up all the artists whom I liked.
Yes.
And I'd say,
admired their work.
And I'd say, Alice, do you want to come as visiting artist? She said, I've never done that. I said, well, it could be really fun, and I told her what it was. She says, okay, I'll try it.
Yeah. Then
I called Lenore Tawney, and she says, I don't do that.
Yeah.
And I said, but I love your work, and I really want the students to be exposed to it. And she said, okay. So cool. I have 3 Lenore Tawney pieces.
Yeah.
She went in my studio. She came early for her as a visiting artist, and so she said, can I work in the studio? I said, sure, take whatever you want. So she was using all my materials, my handmade paper, and cutting pictures out of magazines of me and other people and collaging them. So that was fun. But Alice Neal fell in love with our daughter, who was 6 years old at that time. And they just had this thing. And Sabrina wanted to go every day to the workshop, and she'd stand next to Alice while Alice critiqued people. Mm-hmm. It was a hoot. And so she invited us to come to New York and visit her. And when we did, I said, Alice, I know you're really busy. Called her as soon as I got there. I was at my sister's apartment, and I have a nursing baby son then, and Sabrina. And I said, when can we come over? I know you're probably busy. She says, come right now. And I thought, perfect. We'll get this out of the way. We'll have the visit.
Right.
And then we'll go and do all the things with little kids that we want to do in New York City and go to the museums. And we get there. She has the chair that Andy Warhol sat in when she painted him with the flounce around the bottom.
Right.
And she says, go sit there, Sabrina. Sabrina's back was this far from the back of the chair. Her toes
like 8 inches
barely touched the floor.
Right.
And she says, sit there. And she sat down and she started painting her. She had the canvas ready and everything. So I became her cook for 4 days.
As she painted your daughter.
And she painted Sabrina. She told Sabrina the best stories ever. I mean, that's what Sabrina, she was a great storyteller, and Sabrina was just glued to her. And so she did the painting. And then she said, well, do you want it? I said, well, I couldn't possibly afford it. I said, I wish you'd done a drawing beforehand. I might have been able to afford a drawing. And she said, well, how much can you pay? I said, I don't know. There's no way. And she asked Charles, how much can you pay? And he said, well, if we could pay over 12 months, $200 a month, we could afford it. She says, it's yours. Her paintings were selling for $30,000 then.
Yes.
Now, of course, they're over 150, 200, so
more.
A lot more.
A lot more.
And so she gave us the painting.
Yeah. See, that's the joy of being an artist.
Yeah.
Is those moments that happen for you with other artists and the giving. She knew what she was doing. She did that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, she didn't do that for money.
I think you're absolutely right, because she just loves Sabrina.
Yeah, she could have. She would have. If you had told her $50, she would have probably done it. Because she wanted you to have the painting. It wasn't for her. It wasn't about the money. Clearly, she could take it to her dealer, and they would say, "Yeah, we'll get you $15,000."
Of course, when she was
we'll do it now.
When she was doing the painting, she's like, "Moira, I'm starting to get hungry. Can you make us something?" So I went down.
Yeah.
Luckily, New York, you got stores all around nearby. So I go to the grocery store, I buy some stuff. I come back, she says, "I invited Harvey, my son." So I run back downstairs, I get some more food. And then she said, "Oh, and tonight I invited the curator at the Museum of Modern Art." And I got back downstairs. And these roast chicken dinners turned into Chinese stir fry, because I had to keep cutting the chicken off.
Right, that's funny.
It was funny.
And so the Museum of Modern Art curator came for that?
Pardon?
The curator came from Museum of Modern Art?
Yeah. And
must have
there were a lot of big name people that she had coming, and there was gallery dealers and
yes, yeah.
She's
Allison Neal.
She hadn't had to cook for quite a while, I'm sure, if ever.
Yet she still basically gives you the painting.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So that was funny, but Charles had to. Luckily, she was only about 20 blocks north of my sister's apartment on West End. So Charles would come over there whenever Damien had to nurse. I'd stop cooking and nurse him, and then send them off again.
See, you've lived a whole life.
So that was fun. But the women artists in residence workshops were such a hoot. I mean, those ladies coming out of the big city and going to Indiana,
right?
They just found it so intriguing. It was interesting, and the three of the women, Joan Semmel, Jackie Windsor, who was the other one? Michelle Stewart. And anyway, they got their checks. Or was it Linda Benglis? Anyway, it was three of them got their checks, but they said they wouldn't be able to cash them in New York City easily because they were from out-of-town checks. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So could we go to the bank? So Charles says, okay. So he takes them to the bank, and the bank teller knows him. He says, "Oh, come up here," and he gets him in front of the line of everybody, and everybody's looking. All these Hoosiers watching.
Yeah, and these are all creative women.
And these women are dressed.
Yeah, they're artists.
I mean, they're really artsy.
Yeah, modern art.
Very artsy, and and they all get their checks, and then they're thanking Charles, and they're all hugging him, and some guy in the line says, "Have a nice time, girls." They thought that he was their pimp.
Something, oh God.
Charles just said, by the way the guy said that, he knew that.
Yeah, that's funny.
It was funny.
So we have this show coming up.
Yeah.
That's going to be right away. We've got the paintings hanging right now. And then you have anything else coming up in the near future?
Well, I haven't committed any of this series to shows. Actually, I'm in a show right now at Point Reyes in California. And so in that gallery out there, I'm in that show right now, but they're different pieces. They're some of the horses in moonlight. And,
you do beautiful
and a flower
horses.
in moonlight.
Yeah.
And then I'm just trying to figure out on the Biennale thing.
Right.
There was something in Cincinnati, but I think I'm going to postpone that because I just think I'm going to get overextended now at this point. I figured if I deal with this, and these sculpture ideas are really teasing me. You know what I mean? So it's like, do I really want to do that one or not? So.
And are you in the studio every day?
Oh yeah.
How long do you spend in the studio?
In Colorado, I go out and garden for 3 hours, and then I'm in the studio the rest of the day.
So 6, 8.
And here, I'm in the studio as much as I can be because it's in the house.
Yes.
But we also have all 7 grandchildren here.
Right.
And my son and my daughter are here. So we're often doing things with them.
Yeah, as you should.
And then being on, I did drop off of one board, and I'm on 3 other boards, and that
you're not
kind
busy.
of I'm cooking a lot for those things.
Yeah.
So.
And you're going to cook for our opening.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. You're going to cook for the opening.
I'm going to come and see if we can do some bread together or something.
We're going to do it.
Yeah, we'll try.
Did you guys all hear that? We're going to do it.
We'll do it. I'll try it. If I got the time, I will do it. I'm learning how to cook.
Piece of cake.
So I'm learning how the art of cooking.
Anyway, but yeah, so that distracts me some. But I did decide that I've got to cut down on art boards because you sit a lot of time in meetings.
Yeah, and it takes away from your creative time.
And you know, I enjoy doing the cooking part and helping for the events.
Yes.
And it's not that I don't enjoy the people and everything, the terrific people that I've been working with for years. And in fact, getting on a number of boards helped me meet many people that are closest friends ever.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it does take away from your time in the studio.
Yeah, because you want to help them raise as much money to support the art causes. They're all arts organizations.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure you have given them much art. You're always very generous about giving art to causes of all types.
The auctions, yeah.
Yeah, all the time. You do it all the time.
Yeah.
I love that about you. I do.
I just try not to give the recent work.
Yeah, you do that too sometimes.
Don't want to conflict with.
With me, I don't care.
No.
Yeah, as we're going to a good cause,
anyway.
That's fine. All right. Well, I wanted you to come in. I'm glad we got to talk about the new piece.
Yeah.
So I call it a piece, but it's actually 144 pieces, or one, depending on how it looks like. But yes. So.
But the interesting thing I think that people should know is that me not being the business manager, even though I ran a gallery for 3 years before 9/11, is that you came up with the idea. You know, I was thinking of this whole wall.
Right.
And you came up with the idea of having several smaller sections. Yes. So there's 8 sections.
It's more manageable.
Are smaller, and then there are 3 or 4 really tall sections.
Yes.
So that they already separate into groupings that aren't quite as big.
Yes.
If someone doesn't have a wall that long.
Yes. Yeah, and you could do
which I think is a great idea.
Yeah, and you could also do them vertically.
Yeah.
Which would be, you know, if you have that one wall that's an odd wall but made for art, that you could do 12 feet tall.
Well, and that's what I was thinking about at the Venice Biennale. Depending on the space that I get, I could make it really tall.
Yeah. Instead
of long and horizontal.
Yeah.
And
you could also make it a triangle.
That would, you're right. You can do just about anything here.
You could.
Could you do a hexagon?
Yeah, probably. You could even make a circle, but it would be, you can make a circle for sure.
Circle with bumpy edges, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or
that's kind of like the
not
plants.
Necessarily if you put little triangles
little triangle sections in between.
Yeah, you could actually have a circle.
You shouldn't have suggested that.
Yeah. It would look beautiful, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. You're going to distract me. Yeah.
Sorry.
My mind's
I'm very good at those kind of things. As long as I don't have to create it, I'm good with coming up with the ideas.
Will you cut all the wood for me?
Do you not know how to do that? We'll cut off a finger. No, I will be happy to hang it. Yeah. I will be happy to discuss it and talk about it and enjoy it.
I hire people to do that now.
Yeah.
When I having run several foundries and also having degenerative spine disease and having had 7 surgeries on my hand, that I can't use power tools anymore. The saws, because they vibrate and my hand goes numb.
Yeah.
So I do have to pay people to cut all the boards for me.
Yeah, as you should. Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, it takes away time from your creative time.
And that's no fun anyway.
Yeah, no, that's a grudgery. Or at least it could be. I like chopping vegetables.
Well, there you go.
People always think that's the drudgery. I don't know. Something very... there is something about that.
Yeah.
You know, I like the symmetry and doing it correctly.
I'm always interested in watching these cooking shows where the guys can cut them so perfectly.
Yes.
Because I put all the right things in, but I don't cut them exactly the same size.
So you make grids.
So you got to have a rhythm, right?
Or just a visual something.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's a visual something.
Yeah.
I mean, look, what do? I hang paintings all the time, and I'm looking at lines, designs, fitting, all that, right?
Yeah.
That's what I do all day long.
You're the architect in a sense.
Yeah. So if I'm going to cut vegetables, I'm going to do it in the same way. Oh,
well, that's good to know.
This, or at least that's how my mind wants to do it.
We're just going to have to hire you.
Yeah, no. Like cooking, do not want to have it as a profession. So, all right, Moira. Well, thank you very much, and it's a great show. Thank you for doing all that hard work.
So your idea of having a reception after Christmas, I think, is really good because the chaos before, and then the New Year's chaos between New Year's and Christmas, I think is
Yes,
really
that's
good.
the 28th, I think.
You said 29th.
9th, yeah, I can't remember. Yes, it's a
And in the middle
Friday,
in the middle of the day, then it's not
it's a
going to
Friday.
conflict.
Yeah, that's right.
The last opening you had, there were 4 other gallery openings the same night.
I know.
And
yeah, this will be the 29th, 12 to 2, I think is
right,
what it is.
So.
And come with an appetite. If you
Right,
like
come with an
breads and
appetite.
pastries and things.
now you're obligated to cook the bread.
On
that note,
all right, on that
it'll
note.
taste really good.
Oh, I have no doubt if you're helping. All right, thank you very much.